So I'm one of the few people that after a period of sickness, I now cannot really take creatine anymore. The exact reason I'm still trying to figure out, but I think it has something to do with so when you take creatine, for example, creatine is normally also synthesized in the body, and it will use up something called SAMe, which is a currency that's built through the methylation cycle. When you take creatine, the body will notice it and it will stop creating creatine, right? So it will spare the SAMe. It will not use up the SAMe to create the creatine. SAMe is a massively important currency for other reactions in the body, other processes in the body, and one of them is also it will also facilitate the creation of adrenaline from dopamine. And this is based on an enzyme, and all enzymes in the body are based also on genes, right? So the function of enzymes that can either be upregulated or downregulated based on your genes. I think in my case, the upregulation of the gene that turns the dopamine into the adrenaline is upregulated. And when I take creatine, and I have this aura ring that I wear in the evening to track my sleep and stuff, I get much worse sleep scores, and I just also subjectively, I notice that I sleep less good, less deep, and I just wake up early, like through the night. I wake up a couple of times. And I think the point with that in this video is actually that it is important to be aware of genes. And for me personally, being aware of my own genes helped me massively to understand just my own body and the way I behave and have always behaved even as a child. Because I'll give you another example. There's something called COMT, which clears the dopamine, adrenaline, and noradrenaline from your body. And this can either be upregulated or downregulated. So you could either have slow COMT or fast COMT. And I've got slow COMT. So these catecholamines will linger in my body. And I've always been anxious, even as a child. I was really shy. And I think shyness is a form of anxiety, it's a form of fear. And that is also, it was so absolutely, a relief. It was such an absolute relief for me to find out that my neurochemistry, so my genes and the neurochemistry that fits my genes, so slow clearing of the dopamine and the adrenaline, so perfectly fits my phenotype, so how I act and how I feel. And even as a child, because I always thought, because my parents sometimes told me, like, come on, just behave, just be just be whatever, right? Just be normal. And I couldn't, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't not be shy, right? I just couldn't. It was very difficult for me. And I always thought, like, man, why don't I just act in the way that I also wanted to act, right? Because, and I talk about this a lot on this channel, just the fact that you are in there, you are in your body, because you're very aware of it, right? So I also do quite a bit of just mental work, meditating, and you observe your own mind more. But even back then, when I was a child, even when I was like 17, 18, I wasn't doing this, but I was still very aware that I was kind of locked in my body and the real self wasn't coming out. And the point with it is, I now think this is all based on your neurochemistry, which is easily manipulated. not easily, but it is manipulatable. Because, for example, right now, and just in my overall life at the moment, after figuring these things out, making adjustments in my diet and taking some supplements, this has gotten drastically better, and I actually feel like myself nowadays. Which is, I think you could have money, like you could have all the money in the world, you could have all things, like all external factors you could have and you could chase. But for me, one of the most important things are just the basics. So just feeling like myself, right? Getting decent sleep, feeling healthy, feeling able to exercise, feeling able to be social, to have good relationships. And that all comes back to basic health and just the machinery of your body, that's how I look at it, running smoothly, doing what it's supposed to do. Right? Knowing your weaknesses and being able to support those weaknesses long term. And I think the earlier you figure this out, the better. And even when you're sick, because I was sick, I was quite sick in 2022 and then, later as well. At the time, I didn't really look at it as a good thing. I still don't look at it as a good thing, but it did teach me a lot. And once you're able to figure out the way to tackle this problem, and it will learn you a lot about yourself. You could set yourself up for life. If anything like what happened in 2022 happens to me again, because I took this vaccine and I got very sick. If I take a vaccine in the future and it makes me sick again, I know, I'm confident that I'll be able to heal myself in a matter of months and just be back to my old self again. Honestly, I think I wouldn't even, I honestly think I wouldn't even go down the spiral that I went down back then. Because I was sick for a long time, but not objectively sick, and not like a doctor couldn't really find out what was going on. And then I got actually sick. I got an autoimmune disease from all the inflammation that was going on. This is an absolute, that's just a spiral, right? That you go down. And with these things that I'm also on Reddit a lot, just looking at stories, trying to find how would you say it, like connections, reading a lot about stories and then seeing where the relationships lie. And one of the big things is actually that the inflammation that no one understands and why it's happening, when it turns chronic, it will only get worse in most cases. It only gets worse. The reactivity gets worse. It starts with being wired. The wiredness often does not disappear, but then it also turns into a tiredness. Because the body is just fighting, and using up the currency that it has to fight the fight. But it's not being replenished. So after months of that, I never got to this point, but then you also get the mitochondria dysfunction, like just being extremely tired and not even being able to exercise. So PEM, post-exertional malaise, will follow. And yeah, so that's my mission. That's my mission, to find a way for people in general that are having these problems to unlock themselves and get better.